Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today I want to talk about a subject that we're all familiar with. And it's a story that I've enjoyed over the years. But today I want to look at things from sort of behind the scenes. My title is going to be All Things Are Possible with God. And I want to use the examples of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their sons and their wives to help us understand that all things are possible with God. And we're going to look at the different things that happened in that span of time as God was dealing with the patriarchs of Israel and their wives. And since today is Mother's Day, we're going to put emphasis on the wives today because they had a large part in the things that I'm going to talk about today. And they probably even changed history, with the different decisions that they made, even though they might not have been the best decisions at the time or whatever, but they had quite an impact on our nation and our world today. Let's begin in chapter 13. We're going to begin talking, going through the account of Abraham. We'll have to do it in different things fairly quickly because I timed it yesterday. I only got about maybe 2/3 of it and my time was out. So I had to redo the whole thing and cut things off. So I just got just a few notes today. I'm going to do a lot of talking. I'm going to do some reading too, but we're going to talk about all the different things that occurred. In chapter 13 of Genesis, it said Abram went out to Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot was with him into the south. Abraham was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. He had a lot of possessions. And God had blessed him because he was an obedient man, and he was a righteous man, he was faithful. Verse 14, he said, God said unto Abraham, after Lot, they had so many cattle and they had so many blessings that they had too much cattle and goats and sheep and things to stay together. They had to separate. Even when God gave them a big expanse of land, they got to where the different people that were in their groups were grumbling among themselves and sort of having little skirmishes and all kind of things like that. So they thought it would be best to separate. And Abraham gave Lot the first choice of where he would go. And Lot chose the plains of Jordan. And then Abraham went and chose the other section, which was Canaan. Might read that somewhere down the line. It said in verse 14 that the Lord said unto Abraham that Lot was separated from him. And he said, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are northward and southward and eastward and westward. He's telling that to Abraham. He said, at the time he was called Abram, but for all the land which you see, to you will I give it, and to your seed forever. And I will make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then your seed could also be numbered. And he told him, he said, well, arise and walk through the land in the length of it, in the breadth of it, and I will give all this land to you. So Abraham removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and there he built an altar. God was always on Abraham's mind. Wherever he went, he made provisions to worship his God. Let's continue on in chapter 15. In verse 1 he says, after these things the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, fear not, Abraham, I am your shield and exceeding great reward. And Abraham said, Lord God, what will you give me, seeing that I am childless? I don't even have any children. I don't have the one to leave an inheritance to. He said, and the steward of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abraham said, behold, to me you've given no seed, and one born in my house is mine heir. But God told him, he said, behold, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, this shall not be your heir, but he that shall come out of your own bowels, or out of your own loins, shall be your heir. So God had made promises to him, and that he was going to back him up. In verse 5, he said, he brought him forth abroad, and he said, look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if you are able to number them. And he said unto him, so shall your seed be. That's quite a thing to hear somebody tell you, that you're going to have a family that's going to cover the earth, and your sand is going to be like the number of the stars in the heavens and the sands of the sea. But that would be hard to comprehend. Verse 6, he said he believed in the Lord, and he counted it to him for righteousness. Verse 18, he said, the same day God made a covenant with Abraham and said, unto your seed I have given this land from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the Euphrates. So a vast section of land that God had given to Abraham. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 20. Genesis chapter 16. He said, Sarah, Abraham's wife, bore him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. We know that story. But we're going to tell it today, and we're going to see how God is working behind the scenes. Even though we make bad decisions, God is dealing with Israel. Even though he hadn't named him yet, he didn't give Jacob the name of Israel. But these are the people that God was dealing with, just like he deals with us. We called out, and we are God's people. We are God's sons. So God is going to bless us, and he's going to make events happen in our life. Even though when we get in jams and stuff, he can work it out where we can get out and be, just like nothing happened. And he does that whereas he's dealing with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, because they got in some different difficulties over the way. But God had a way for them to get out. And the women were involved a lot in these stories. He said to Sarai, said unto Abraham, the Lord has restrained me from bearing, so I pray you, go into my handmaid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham listened to her. He hearkened to her voice. And Abraham's wife took Sarai, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt there 10 years in the land of Canaan. They were there 10 years. And Abraham had been promised to have a son, have a seed to have this inheritance. And I know that he and Sarah probably talked about it many, many times. But after 10 years, she was about ready to give up, I guess. Just didn't think it was going to happen. So she wanted to give Hagar to Abraham to be his wife. In verse 4, he said he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. That could happen easy, that. Put two women in one kitchen, best friends, and you're going to have problems. I don't know if they ever talked it over before they decided to do it and just jumped in and without realizing all the problems that it could cause. In verse 6, he said, Abram said unto Sarah, he said, behold, your maid is in your hand. Well, before that, he said, she was despised in her eyes, and he said, let the Lord judge between me and you. But Abraham told her, he said, your maid is in your hands to do with her as you please. And when Sarah dealt harshly with her, or hardly with her, she fled from Sarah. Verse 7, the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain of the weir of Shur. And he told Hagar, Sarah's maid, why are you here? Where are you going? And she said, I'm fleeing from the face of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply your seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. So another blessing with tremendous results. You know, she's going to have a multitude of children, not children, but descendants. And Ishmael was her son. Ishmael, through his life, he had 12 sons, 12 princes. And you multiply that, I don't know how, it looked like everybody had large families back at that time, but you could have pretty close to 100 children in no time at all. And then over the years with the offspring and stuff, there's a lot of Arabs descendants that came from Ishmael, you know, around the world today, these princes. And they have an effect on the world economy and all the different things that take place in the world today. In verse 15, he said, Hagar bare Abraham a son, and she called his name Ishmael. And Abraham was 86 years old when this occurred. That's kind of old, but I guess that's why Sarah was ready to give up. Didn't think that could bear children at that age. Chapter 17 said Abraham was 99 years old when the Lord appeared unto him and said, I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be you perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face and he talked with God, saying, As for me, my covenant is with me. You shall be a father of many nations. Neither shall your name anymore be called Abram, but it will be called Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your seed, and after in the generation for an everlasting covenant to be to God unto you, and to your seed after you. I will give unto you and your seed after you the land where you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So God continues to review the covenant and the promises that he made with Abraham. Time after time, he tells him about all the things that he's going to do. In verse 15, he says, God said unto Abraham, As for Sarah, your wife shall not call her name Sarah, but change it to Sarah. And 16, he said, I will bless her and give her a son of her. So Sarah is going to have a child. He said, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, of kings, and people shall be of her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed. And he said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto me that is 100 years old? And Sarah that is 90 years old, she'll bear a child. And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before me. And God said, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant with his seed after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But he is not the promised son. He's not going to get the promised blessings. He left off talking to him, and God went up from Abraham, and Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that was born in his house, and all that were bought, and his money, and every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin the selfsame day that God had said unto him. Abraham was 99 years old, and he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, at that time was 13 years old. That's kind of old to be circumcised, 99 years old. Let's turn to Genesis 21. They have the example of Sarah laughing, and she said she didn't laugh, but God said, yes, you did. Now, Abraham laughed too, but he didn't make anything out of that, about him laughing about it. There must have been some turmoil and different things going on, when they were talking about all this, because they never saw that before, and they didn't expect God to answer that way and bless him at that age. If it would happen to one of us, we would think it was crazy. Chapter 21, it said in verse 1, he said, the Lord visited Sarah as he said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called his son Isaac. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded. And that's what they recommend today when you go in a hospital or whatever. At the 8th day, it seems to be the time that the blood coagulates better than any other time. In verse 5, he said, Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. Starting out with a new family at 100 years old. Chapter 22. We'll go read almost the whole chapter, different spots in it. It came to pass after these things that God did tempt, it didn't tempt him, but he tested Abraham and said unto him, behold, and Abraham answers, behold, I am here. He said, take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and get you to the land of Moriah, and offer him therefore a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you of. Now by this time, Isaac was a teenager. And so Abram rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son. And he brought the wood for a burnt offering, and he rose up and he went to a place which God had told him. And on the 3rd day of being there, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off. So Abraham instructed the young men to stay where they were with his animals. He said, I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood, the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac, his son, made him carry the wood. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they both went together. And Isaac spoke unto Abraham, his father, and he said, my father. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? So his mind was going, too. I don't know if he would even have an idea that he would be the one that would be sacrificed, because to me that would be out the ballpark to think that at that time. So Abraham said, my son, God will provide him a lamb for a burnt offering. So they both went together, and they came to a place which God had told him of. So Abraham built an altar there, and he laid the wood in order, and he bound Isaac his son and laid him upon the altar. It means that Isaac had to be in submission to his dad for him to be able to tie him up, because a teenager is pretty strong, and his dad's 100 years old. If he was belligerent or whatever and wanted to fight him off, he could have probably had to fight him off if he wanted, but evidently he didn't, because Abraham was able to tie him up. And he came to a place where he tied up, bound Isaac his son, and he laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham. And he answered, here I am. He said, lay not your hand upon the lad, neither do you anything unto him, for now I know that you fear God. See that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. That must have been a touching moment for God. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and he looked and beheld a ram caught in a thicket by the thorns. And Abraham went and he took the ram and offered him for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord. We need to think and meditate on that situation where all of this is taking place. And if you put yourself in that type of situation, what would your mind be thinking? This is serious stuff for God to tell you to kill your own firstborn. And you've been waiting something like 20, 40 years for it. And the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and he said, I have sworn by, said the Lord, for because you have done this thing and not have withheld your son, your only son, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens, and as the sand in which is upon the seashore, and the seed shall possess the gate of your enemies. And in all your seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. And we are part of that seed, and we are blessed because of Abraham. And we know that a lot of the Arabs looked to Abraham almost as their God. And they all considered themselves Abraham's seed. And probably because of Ishmael. So Abraham returned unto the young man, and they rose up and they went together to Beersheba. And that's where Abraham dwelt. He said in chapter 23, Sarah was 170 years old when she died. And she died in Beersheba, the same is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came and he mourned for her and wept for her. Isaac was 37 years old when Sarah died. So she had some years to spend with him. He was a mature individual by that time. The next thing on Abraham's agenda was that he wanted to be sure that he could choose a good wife for Isaac. He didn't want his son marrying one of the Canaanite women. So he sent his eldest servant to take a wife. We'll see that in Genesis chapter 24. Genesis chapter 24. And we'll begin reading in verse 1. He said, Abraham was old and well stricken in age, and God had blessed Abraham in all things. So Abraham said unto his eldest servant of his house, that ruled over all that he had, he said, put, I pray, your hand under my thigh. This is the way when they made an agreement, a covenant. He said, I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son of the daughters of Canaan, but you shall go into my country, and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. So the servant went around searching for an individual. And we'll drop down to verse 14. He said, and let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I shall say, let down your pitcher, I pray you, that I may drink. And she will say, drink, and I will give you camel's drink. And let the same be said, let the same be she that is appointed for your servant Isaac. Thereby I will know that you have showed kindness unto my master. So he's lining things up. He wants God to do everything, clearly, so he doesn't make a mistake, and he does exactly what Abraham had told him to do. And it came to pass before that he had done speaking that, behold, Rebekah came out, who was born in Bethuel, the son of Micah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother. Nahor was Abraham's brother, and she came out with her pitcher on her shoulders. And the damsel was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well, and she filled the pitcher and came up. So God answered that prayer right quick. And Rebekah came out, and in verse 24 she said unto him, she said, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Michael, which she bare unto Nahor. Verse 29, Rebekah had a brother who his name was Laban, and Laban ran out to the man unto the well. And it came to pass when he saw the earrings and the bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, Thus spoke the man unto me, that he came unto the man, and behold, he stood by the camels at the well. So he came in and they had a conversation. And verse 40 he says, The Lord whom I walk will send his angel with you, and prosper your way, and you shall take a wife for my son of my kindred, of my father's house. Verse 43 said, Behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin comes forth to draw water, and I say to her, Give me, I pray, a little water from my pitcher. Both you and I will also, and she says to me, Both drink you, and I will also draw water for your camels, and the woman whom the Lord had appointed out of your master's son. So God had made a choice for them, found Rebekah, and she was going to be the one that would be chosen to marry Isaac. In verse 50 it says, Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing proceeds from the Lord. We cannot speak unto you bad or good. He said, Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go and let her be by your master's son. Let her be your master's son's wife, as the Lord had spoken. And down in verse 58 he said, And they called Rebekah and said unto her, Will you go with this man? And she said, Yes, I will go. Drop it down to verse 64. So Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. Now some people think this is the first time they had a cigarette, because camels used to be a popular cigarette. So Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, I guess she got excited. She got off the camel, and she said unto the servant, What man is this that walks in the field to meet us? And the servant said, It is my master. Therefore she took a veil and she covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. And he took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac comforted his mother, was comforted after his mother's death. He didn't waste any time at all. When he met her, they went and I guess they talked and everything and got acquainted and all of that. And Jacob took her to his Sarah's tent. God was behind the scenes all the time, working with Abraham and Abraham's eldest servant, and channeling them where they had to go. He knew human nature, and he knew how everyone thought and everything. All he had to do was make the atmosphere suitable for them to go in that direction. Not that he forced them to go, or that he made them, that he guided them there. He let them do that on their own, but he made the atmosphere and the situation right for them to do that. And that's the way God does work. He works in our lives that way. He does things that we don't even know. We can look back and see that God had a hand in some of the things that we do, because he makes the opportunities, grant us the opportunities to make the right decisions. When we pray and we ask God for his help and for his spirit, and that's how he answers. He doesn't come out and talk to us and tell us what he's doing, but he makes the situation work where we can receive the blessing that we're asking for. So now we see that Isaac and Rebekah are together. And verse 25, just in passing, we'll bring out these facts that Abraham took a wife after that, and her name was Keturah. Sometimes we forget that. and she had 6 children. And verse 5, that's the end of that scenario. And verse 5 is a separate subject altogether. Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. Isaac wasn't the firstborn. Ishmael was the firstborn. And the custom was that the firstborn would get a double portion of the inheritance, and then it would be divided further down the line. But Ishmael didn't get anything. Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. And we're going to see that happens a lot of different times as God deals with different individuals. Just because the custom is such and such a way doesn't mean that he'll follow it, because when we fall short and things, we don't keep the promise or the covenant we make with God, we err in some fashion, then that nullifies the covenant. We got to obey God and follow God's will. And Sarah didn't follow God's will by giving Hagar to Abraham to have a child. She wasn't patient. So she broke that agreement. And Ishmael did not receive a portion of that birthright promise. But God did multiply his people, and he blessed him tremendously. It said all the days of years of Abraham's life was 175 years. That's a ripe old age for that particular time. And Ishmael and Isaac buried him in a cave at Machpelah in the field of Ephraim, the son of Zohar, the Hittite, which is before Mamre. And it came, then in verse 11, it says, it came to pass after the death of Abraham that God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac dwelt well by the well Lahairoi. I guess that's the way you pronounce it, I'm not sure. It said, none of these generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bore unto Abraham. And he goes down there, lists the names of the children of Hagar. Not Hagar, it might be Keturah. Genesis chapter 26. Well, before I do that, I want to review what took place with Esau and Jacob. Verse 21 of chapter 25, he said, Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated to him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And the children struggled together with her, and she said, if it be so, why am I this way? And she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from your bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. That doesn't sound right. Is this prophetic? Why is God making that statement? He's changing things. He's setting up a different situation. And it's going to have to be dealt with someone down the line. They're going to have to do something, because that's not going to go over with Esau's mother. Not his mother, but Esau himself. That's not going to go over well with him, to see that he was the firstborn and he doesn't get a birthright. And then he's going to end up serving his brother. Again, verse 24, when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment, and he called his name Esau. And after that, his brother came out, and his hand took on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she bare him. The boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, an outdoorsman, and Jacob was a plain man, just dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, and he did eat his venison. But Rebekah loved Jacob. And we'll see some things where Rebekah gets involved, and she may have affected history with all the things that she did. Jacob sought porridge, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. He felt weak. And Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me, I pray you." That same red pottage, I think it's some type of a soup. For I am faint, therefore before was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, "Sell me this day your birthright." And Esau said, "I'm at a point to die. What does it profit me to have a birthright? What good is it going to do me?" And Jacob said, "Swear to me today, this day, and swear unto him." And he sold his birthright unto Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau the bread and the pottage of lentils. And he did eat and drink, and he rose up and he went his way. It was a big thing to Esau. What good was the birthright? He'll change his mind a little bit later on. And there was a famine in the land, because the first famine that was in the days of Abraham and Isaac went unto Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, into Gerar. And God appeared to him and said, "Go right down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I tell you." And there was a famine in that area, so he didn't want him going back down in that area. He said, "Sojourn in this land, and I will bless you, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. For your seed, and unto your seed, I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swore unto Abraham your father. I will make your seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I'll give unto your seed all these countries. In your seed shall all nations of the earth be blessed." And this world is blessed by those that follow God's way of life, and that are who are following God. If everybody wasn't following God, there would be no hope for this world. The things the way we live is an important thing to this world, even though they don't have any idea what's going on. "Because the Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws, I'm going to give you the promises that I told Abraham." In verse 12, we said, Isaac sowed in that land, and he received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. How would you like to plant a garden and receive 100-fold of what you plant? It'd be hard to receive all of it. He said, "And Isaac waxed great, and he went forward, and he grew until he was very great. He had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds, and he had a great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him." So he was a man of means. In verse 17, Isaac departed there, and he pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar, and he dwelt there. And Isaac began to dig different wells and stuff all over the area. Genesis 27. It came to pass when Isaac was old, his eyes were dim, so that he could not see, and he called Esau, his eldest son, and he said unto him, "My son." And Esau answered him, and he said, "Behold, I am old, and I know not the day of my death." I don't know when I'm going to die. He said, "But I'm getting weak and fragile, and I don't know how much longer I have." He said, I want you to take your hunting supplies, your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and take me some venison, and make me savory meat such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." So he was telling Esau to go out and get him a deer and come back and fix something for him, and then he would give him the blessings, the birthright blessings. The only thing is, in verse 5, Rebekah heard when Isaac spoke to Esau. So Esau went into the field to hunt for venison and bring it, and Rebekah spoke unto Jacob her son, saying, "Behold, I heard your father speaking unto Esau your brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son," Rebekah is telling Jacob that he had to get out and said to obey my voice according to which I command you. Go to the flock and fetch me 2 kids of the goats, and I will make savory meat for your father, such as he loves. And I shall bring it to your father, and he may eat, and he may bless you before his death. And Jacob wasn't in favor of that. He said, Esau is my brother's a hairy man, and I'm a smooth man. My father perhaps will feel me, and he'll find out that I am a deceiver. And I shall bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. And Rebekah said, upon me be the curse. My son, obey my voice and go and fetch me. So she's fooling with some trickery here. They're going to try to trick her dad. And Rebekah took a good raiment of her eldest son of Esau with her, and she put it on Jacob, her younger son, so he would have his scent of his body. And she put the skins of the kids of the goat upon his hands on the smooth of his neck. She gave him savory meat and bread, which she had prepared, and she gave it to Jacob. And he came unto his father, and he said, my father, here I am. And he asked, who are you? And Jacob said, I am Esau, your firstborn, and I've done according to what you bid me to do, and I'd like to sit down and eat your venison so that you can bless me. And Isaac said, man, that was quick. He said, how is it that you found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord your God had brought it to me. Telling lie after lie. And God is working behind the scenes. Not God is not saying that he's telling him to lie and all that kind of stuff, but God worked it out where they would have an opportunity to trick him. He said, Isaac said to Jacob, come here, I pray that I may feel you, son, your very son. And when Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob, one whole page over. Isaac said unto Jacob, come here, I pray you, that I may feel you, my son, whether you be my son Esau or not. I had two sheep, that's what my trouble was. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him, and he said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So he couldn't tell the difference because his hands were hairy, and his brother Esau's hands were hairy also. So he blessed him. He said, are you my son Esau? And Jacob said, I am. He said, bring it near to me, and I will eat my son's venison, that my soul may bless you.